This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. It's time to leave your tower and have your pet lizard totally murder your abusive fake mother. It's Tangled, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to This Film's Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. On this week's episode, it's a viewer's choice episode. We had you guys pick between Tangled, Beauty and the Beast, and Frozen, and Tangled barely edged out Beauty and the Beast.
Frozen never had a chance.
Frozen did not have a chance at all. Wasn't even close. So we are talking about Tangled, which is based on Rapunzel, the Grimm fairy tale, Grimm's collection fairy tale. If you want to hear more about fairy tales and about the background of Rapunzel, you can go back and listen to our prequel episode. If you have not checked that out, we release that. We release a prequel episode every Wednesday before a main episode. And it gives a little bit of background on last week in particular. Katie did a bit of a deep dive on fairy tales, and we also talked about Rapunzel specifically. So if you want more info about those things, go check that out. But it's the main episode. We watched Tangled last night. I realized I hadn't seen this in a lot longer than I had thought because I remembered very little about it, other than maybe some of the music. And so we're going to talk about it. We don't have all of our main segments. I'm going to skip. We don't have Guess Who. We don't have Lost in Adaptation. And I'm going to skip Let Me Sum Up because I feel like most people either know the story of Rapunzel or have seen Tangled.
I
both.
think probably people are going to have enough passing familiarity. Tangled is on Disney Plus.
Yeah, it's on Disney
right now.
Plus.
We watched it through Disney Plus. I also posted on our Facebook and Twitter pages today I took pictures of the story from my book.
It's only a few pages long.
Yeah,
right?
it's like 2.5 pages long. I couldn't find a version online that was the version I wanted to share with you all, so I just bootlegged some pictures from my book.
There you go. So we're going to get right into the main content of the episode with... Is that in the book?
Nicholas Flamel is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone.
The what?
Honestly, don't you two read?
So, if you know the story of Rapunzel, just a little brief summary. She's a late girl stuck in a tower. She's got really long hair. And then she's trapped there by an evil witch lady. An evil witch lady.
Yes. Some versions call her a witch. Some versions call her a fairy. It's kind of interchangeable.
Yeah.
Like, depending on what kind of fairy tale you're talking about.
Right.
So...
Right. And in the movie, there's some other things that happen, but eventually she escapes and finds a love interest, and they live happily ever after. That's the rough gist of it. And the first question I have is about said love interest. Flynn Rider, he's our love interest in the movie. He is a thief in the film, and I know there's like a prince or something in Rapunzel. Is it Flynn Rider? Are they similar in any way? What's the deal?
Well, there is a prince. You're right about that. He fills a similar role as Flynn Rider, which is that of Rapunzel's love interest. But he's not usually named.
Yeah, that's typical.
And that's pretty typical of fairy tales for characters to be unnamed, unless they're title characters.
Right.
It's also pretty typical for the kind of like love interest prince character who rides in to not really have much of a personality.
Right. They're generic.
Yes, they're generic dudes.
Right. That makes sense. And that's kind of what I figured, but I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have any, that wasn't, That's the whole point of this segment. So.
Yeah.
I don't need to explain it to you guys.
But I think it is something kind of important to note about fairy tales is that when you're reading these older stories, you're not really looking for character development. We're basically playing with stock characters here. Yeah. We're playing with archetypes.
Mm-hmm. So in the movie, the thing that creates Rapunzel basically is that her mother is dying of a sickness, of some sort of sickness, and and her mother in the movie, they are the king and the queen of some kingdom, and she's pregnant with Rapunzel, but she's dying. The king has the people go find of there's tale of this magic flower that can heal anybody, and they go find the flower and they use it to heal the mother, and that this imbues Rapunzel with her magic hair. And the reason it grows so long, and also the reason it has magic powers that we find out later in the film, is that was that in the book? Oh, and then also on top of that, does then Mother Gothel use that said flower to stay young?
No,
originally.
Yeah, no and no.
Okay.
Interesting tidbit here, though. I looked this up while we were watching the movie. We talked about a little bit in the prequel how Rapunzel is actually the name of the plant that her mother in the fairy tale wants from out of the witch's garden. And the flower on the Rapunzel plant does look a little bit like the magic flower in the movie, which I thought was interesting. It's purple instead of gold, like in the movie, but it has like similar looking petals, and it has a similar curly stamen, is I think what the middle part of the flower is called.
Yeah, I think
like
that's correct.
Yeah, this part that sticks up.
Yeah, I think that is correct.
So I thought that was interesting. That was not something that I knew.
Oh, all right. But no flower in the book.
No flower in the book.
Does Mother Gothel steal Rapunzel to stay young? Because as I said, she was using the flower to stay young, and then after the baby is taken, she realizes that the baby may have this power, and then she steals the baby and uses Rapunzel to stay young. Is that from the book?
No, it is not. In the book, the witch asks for the baby as trade for the husband taking greens from her garden. The greens that his wife really wants because she's pregnant. Oh,
right. We mentioned that in the prequel.
Yeah.
So there is an element of getting some plant for the pregnant wife.
Yeah,
but
there
it's
is.
It's altered into a more life or death situation.
Yeah.
Whereas in the story, she just wants these. Huh. And then I guess so. Then why is there a explanation for, maybe you'll have more on this later, for why Mother Gothel wants Rapunzel? Does she just want a child, or?
There's not an explanation for it in the story. Like, we don't explore what her motivation is for asking for the baby, but I do want to talk about that later because it's a thing that happens in fairy tales.
Okay. Is Rapunzel friends with any animals? This is classic Disney fare. In the movie, Rapunzel has a pet chameleon that she is friends with, named Pascal. Is Pascal from the book, or any pet companions?
No. She doesn't have any animal companions, at least that we're told of in the book. Right. I would be pretty impressed if she had a chameleon, since it's like set in 17th century Germany.
No, I understand. That's always seemed like a strange choice to me, but I was never sure where chameleons are, native. It seemed maybe possible. I don't know. I think they're in multiple places. I think generally we sort of uneducatedly assume that they're like, jungle creatures of some sort.
Right, we're finding chameleons are from Africa. Chameleons primarily live in the mainland of sub-Saharan Africa and on the island of Madagascar, although a few species live in northern Africa, southern Europe, the Middle East, southern India, Sri Lanka, and several smaller islands in the western Indian Ocean.
So it could be southern Europe, depending on where that means, potentially, because I think the setting of this always struck me, or at least on watching this again, the setting of this movie struck me as somewhere either vaguely like, because the architecture of the castle is very specific and unique. It looks almost like Russian Baltic kind of thing with like some of the spires, but that also could be a Middle Eastern type of influence potentially, and I wonder if it could be some like Austrian or some, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like somewhere southeast in Europe that maybe potentially also has, I don't know.
Maybe.
Because it's never addressed in the film where it's set. You know, they don't say like
I
the
mean,
kingdom or
without
anything.
digging further into where chameleons come from, I would assume Southern Europe means like Italy, the Mediterranean,
Right.
that type of area.
I agree. And we talked about this. The Rapunzel of Grimm's is most likely a French, or what was did we talk about?
Well, we talked about how
It's German, right?
well, it's the Grimms are German, yeah.
Right.
So this is a German variation on. We talked about how there was another variation in Italy that predates Rapunzel, and also a version in France that also predates Rapunzel. But the Italian one was the oldest that we know of. That's like recognizable as being this story. We also talked about other potential inspirations. We talked about the Middle Eastern Persian epic poem that features a heroine who has long hair that she uses as a ladder. So, you know, that's something where that could have potentially come in.
Yeah.
We also talked about like inspiration from various like mythologies about sun deities being trapped in towers. There's a lot of different places where inspiration could have potentially came from.
Yeah. And so it is interesting because it could have been, so Spain has chameleons. Southern Spain does, apparently, on this map. But so it also could have been that somehow it could have been something, and it's never addressed, but it could have been something that like Mother Gothel got for her from like a trader. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't necessarily have to have been indigenous, right?
No, and I mean, it's kind of a silly argument all the way around because it's a Disney movie.
No, I understand. But usually
don't-
their pet friends are like relatively...
Yeah, I would say probably as far as that goes, she's got the one that it's kind of maybe the biggest head scratcher.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, you know, they like older princesses, they have like the forest creatures or like the mice that live in the house in Cinderella, and that all makes sense. And like Belle has a horse, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Jasmine has a tiger, and that I guess makes sense.
Potentially, yeah.
I mean, like, surface level, it makes more sense than the chameleon in Tangled.
Yeah.
But, like, it also doesn't not make sense.
No, it could make it work.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's a whole backstory.
Does Pascal have his own backstory?
There's a whole
that I don't know?
backstory. As an infant, a small and defenseless Pascal would remain by his mother's loving side at all times. Where on a dark and stormy night, the two chameleons were attacked by a venomous snake.
What?
Pascal's mother was killed fending off the snake. The sacrifice allowed Pascal time to reach safety. Upon stumbling into a secluded forest, Pascal heard the voice of a young girl within a tower and curiously, where did this come from? Climbed to
What are you on
I'm
right
on the
now?
Disney like wiki, like, you know, like the not Wikipedia, but like the Disney wiki page, like the fandom page
Okay,
for
so there
Pascal.
is... I don't know...
Could be from a video game.
Well, there is a Disney Channel Rapunzel series.
Oh, and there's a TV series. That's probably what
so
it's from.
So it's probably from that. Either that or somebody really went above and beyond to give Pascal a backstory.
Yeah. And now let's just double check and make sure maybe the TV series Tangled setting. Maybe the TV series has a like had some story. And it just says loosely based on the Rapunzel, which takes place in Germany. So
We know the kingdom is called Corona.
yeah, oh, that's right, because we
Yeah.
talked about that from the yeah, it is Corona, but so that could be because that's a Spanish,
Yeah.
so it could be in Spain,
So it could be in Spain.
and if it is in Spain, then it could make
Then
sense.
we've justified the
Then
chameleon.
we've made sense because in southern Spain they have chameleons.
Yeah.
Interesting. We also never hear. I mean, everybody just speaks English, so.
Yeah.
But you do have. Yeah, it could be Spain. It could take place in Spain. That's interesting. And with Corona being, I think we figured it out. I think it takes place in Spain. I think that's the setting.
Solved it.
And that's why there's a chameleon, and it totally makes sense. Anyways, that was a trick. What was my next question? So the first time we were introduced to the prince / writer and writer in the film, writer in the film, the prince in the story, he climbs into the tower as he's running from something. I assume that's not the case in the book since he's a prince and not a thief. But Rapunzel attacks him in the movie and hits him with a frying pan. Is their first encounter similar in any way in the story? Is my question.
No, it plays out pretty differently. So the prince is made aware of Rapunzel. One day he's out in the forest and he hears her singing. And he spies around and sees the witch going up into the tower, so he figures out how to do it. So when the witch leaves, he goes over and calls for Rapunzel to let down her hair, and she does. He climbs up into the tower. Now the story mentions that she's afraid at first. No mention of frying pans or anything.
No assault.
No assault, at least not that we know of. It does mention that she's afraid, but then she gets over it. She likes him. Maybe he's cute. I don't know. Agrees to
Maybe
help
he's been
him.
designed by a board of women to be the most handsome Disney prince that ever existed.
Perhaps. We don't really know.
We don't know.
But at any rate, she agrees to help him up into the tower every day so that they can hang out. She also ends up pregnant by the end of the story, so there's that.
Rapunzel is thirsty. We get it.
I mean, you would be too if you lived in a tower for your entire
with
life.
Your evil, gaslighting mother, fake mother all the time. All right. Does Rapunzel trick Mother Gothel into taking a long trip so that she has time to run off? That's what happens in the movie. Is that yes. Rapunzel wants to go see where these lanterns are coming from. I didn't ask about the lanterns because I read that in the prequel episode we discussed that the lanterns was a choice that the movies made because they needed something for Rapunzel to do once she left the tower, because otherwise basically the story's over, she gets away. So they gave her the lantern thing, and she wants to go see the lanterns, so she asks Mother Gothel if she can do it, and she's like no, and so she tricks Mother Gothel into going to far away to get her a birthday present so that she can run away while she's there, or while she's gone. Is that anything?
So I think this is maybe the single largest deviation that the movie takes from the bones of the story. Yeah. Which is that Rapunzel leaves her tower.
On her own, of her own accord.
Yeah, of her own accord. In the story, the witch does banish her close to the end of it. So I guess technically she leaves the tower in the fairy tale, but the movie gives her that autonomy to leave the tower on her own. Yeah. So no, she doesn't have to trick Mother Gothel into taking a long trip to answer your question.
That is definitely a sort of overall change to the narrative, and sort of an important one is that in the movie, Rapunzel wants to leave the tower.
Yeah, at least for a little while.
At least for a while, yeah.
Yeah, she
she
is planning to come back at least at the beginning.
Right. But she has a desire to
she has desire to leave and to go out and to see the world. And the narrative of the movie gives her that agency that she doesn't really have in the book. We're never really made privy to what her desires are.
Again, for all of us, and I know with all these questions it seems silly because it is a 3-page story.
It's a 3-page story.
So obviously it's a lot is added to and that sort of thing for the movie. Is there a run-in with any ruffians at a tavern at any point?
No, there's not.
They don't sing I've Got a Dream?
No.
Paul F. Tompkins as a little fat cherub man isn't in the movie. The white bearded old guy is played by Paul F. Tompkins, who's a very funny comedian, and I didn't realize that until I was watching the movie, and I was like, that sounds like Paul F. Tompkins. Because he does a bunch of he's like a character voices improv guy, and I recognized his voice and I looked it up and it was him. I was like, oh, good for him. He's hilarious, but I wasn't expecting him to be in the movie. Does Rapunzel's hair glow when she sings?
No, at least not that we're told.
Does it seem to have any magic powers other than being very long, like longer than possible?
No.
Okay. So, like, the magic of Rapunzel in the story essentially is just that her hair is, like, abnormally long.
It's abnormally long enough to become a ladder. That's the wonder magic aspect of the story.
Gotcha. Maximus. So, in the movie, there's this horse named Maximus who is trying to hunt down and turn in Flynn Rider.
Yeah. He's a palace horse.
He's a palace horse.
He's a cop horse.
Yeah, he's a cop horse. And he's trying to hunt down Flynn Rider, who is a thief. And they have a tumultuous relationship that ultimately they become friends. But the reason I wanted to ask, obviously I assumed there wasn't an anthropomorphic horse hunting a thief in the story. But there's a moment in the movie where we zoom in on his name and see Maximus, and it feels like it's supposed to be important. Now, it may be because of a later moment in the book or in the movie with the sun symbol is maybe just another moment for us to see that sun symbol again, because that's the big reveal at the end of the movie, how she realizes who she is because of this sun symbol. But in the film, the fact that it focused on Maximus and that he got a name at all, I guess, I mean, it makes sense that he would get a name. But was that a reference to anything? Is there any character that you could think of that makes sense or is in any way related to this horse character?
I don't think anything beyond fairy tale princes usually being depicted as being on a horse, right, or like having a horse companion. Although I do think that makes the animosity between Flynn and Maximus kind of an interesting subversion.
Yeah.
Because even if you think back to like other Disney princes, they usually, like if they have a friend, it's probably a horse.
Yeah, usually like a horse. Yeah, and it is, I mean, it is an interesting subversion because Flynn isn't a prince.
Yeah, and
so having that companion, the typical prince companion, be his adversary, become companion is, it's a fun little change up, a little mix up. How long is Rapunzel's hair in the story? Because in the movie, it seems to be as long as is needed for a given scene. Which it's magic, so that's fine. I'm just wondering, like, if it is equally magic in the story, where like sometimes it seems to be 300 feet long, and other times it seems to be 10 feet long.
So we don't have any indication from the story that the length of the hair changes.
Gotcha.
But this is actually one of those rare times where we get another really specific answer from a fairy tale. The story says, specifically, that when she lowers her hair out of the tower, it drops 20 yards. So somewhere in the ballpark of like 60 feet.
Yeah, so we know precisely how long it has to at least be.
Yeah.
Which is 60 feet, which, yeah, you're right, that's usually you wouldn't get.
Usually we don't get something so specific.
No. And I would say in the movie, it's a little longer than that. Well, the tower is a little taller than that. If I had to guess looking at it, I would say it's probably more like 100 or 150 feet in that ballpark, just kind of guessing, maybe even taller than that. It could be like 200 or 300 feet. But it is, her hair does numerous times change length throughout the course of the film. And
it seems to,
it's
depending
fine.
on
It's
like
magic
what we need
hair.
to happen.
Like in the openings, like in the opening song, what the heck is that called? The chores song. The quarantine song. The quarantine anthem.
I think it's called When Will My Life Begin?
Yeah, When Will My Life Begin? Like there's moments where it's like trailing around the entire tower and then she's like throwing it in big loops.
And it's like everywhere you look is like there's loops and loops of hair.
Yeah, there's like hundreds and hundreds of feet. And then other times, even when she gets it braided, it's 10 feet long. It's like not even 10. It's like doesn't touch the ground. So it's like 5-6 feet long. So yeah, it's definitely one of those, and which is, like I said, it's fine. It's magic hair and it's a fairy tale. I get it. I don't have a problem with it. I was just interested. So in the film, Rapunzel has a light bulb realization that she's the princess. She runs away. She comes back. She's taken back by Mother Gothel, and she won't. It's like, you're staying here forever. And then she's like in her room and she's looking at this mural that she's painted on the wall. And she has like this just like flashbulb, realization where she remembers these sun symbols that she's seen everywhere, like on the horse and on the flag that she has. She has like a little flag or something of the kingdom and all these other places, and then she's looking at her mural and seeing it in all these places where she like subconsciously painted it into the mural, and that makes her realize, among other things, that she in fact is the lost princess from this kingdom. Is there anything like that from the story?
No.
I assumed not.
She's not a princess in the fairy tale, or at least it's never stated
Not that we know
specifically. Her parents are usually depicted as like peasants of some sort, and I guess
right, because the father, they had like a garden.
Yeah.
Or wait, no, Mother Gothel had a garden.
Mother Gothel has the garden. And I was going to say, I don't think it's completely unfounded to depict them as poor, since apparently they couldn't afford to just buy some produce from her.
Yeah.
He had to hop the wall and steal it.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make sense, yeah. And especially him specifically doing it and not like a servant.
Yeah.
Because I could see if he sent a servant out to get it and they were like, no, let's go grab this.
Yeah.
But if it's him specifically, the king's not going to go hop the wall and steal some greens, some kale from the local old maid. Like, not going to happen. I would assume. But who knows? So yeah, I think you're fair. I think it is fair to say that in the story they're probably just,
just
peasants,
normal people.
Just normal folk. The climax of the film, Flynn Rider comes back to save Rapunzel from the tower. And Mother Gothel stabs him right in the spleen or something. Bloodless knife though when it comes out, but she stabs him right somewhere in the side. A bad place to be stabbed.
Yeah. A soft spot.
A place where organs are, important ones. And he falls over and he's dying. And then Mother Gothel is going to pull Rapunzel away, take her away to where she'll never be found again. And Rapunzel says, I'll fight you forever, but if you let me save Flynn, I'll come with you and I'll just live with you forever. Just let me save him. And she goes to try to, and Mother Gothel's like, fine, okay. And Flynn, though, in that moment, picks up a piece of glass and cuts off all her hair so that she can't save him, and is also is then not useful to Mother Gothel because she no longer has the healing hair. Any of that happened in the book. Mainly the cutting off of the hair, I guess, was the thing that's a very striking moment in the film. He turns her into Mandy Moore. I don't know if you noticed that. I thought it was very fascinating how quickly she all of a sudden looks like a young Mandy Moore.
Yeah.
She has like the exact haircut and hair color of Mandy Moore. I was like, wow, that's interesting.
In the fairy tale, after it's revealed that Rapunzel, quote, betrayed the witch by allowing the prince to come into the tower,
right,
the witch does cut off her hair and then banishes her to a desolate wasteland, we're told. And the witch then tricks the prince into coming up into the tower by dropping Rapunzel's braid out of it.
So that happens in the movie, and that's similar.
Yeah.
Like he calls up and she drops the hair, and we think it's Rapunzel, but it's actually the witch.
Surprise.
Yeah.
So the prince, upon, of course, seeing that now the witch is up there and not Rapunzel, he actually jumps out of the tower and is blinded by some thorns, which is a very fairy tale thing. And then actually,
like how he's not harmed in any other way by jumping out
blinded.
of a what do we say, 60-foot tall
At
tower?
Least 60 feet.
Yeah, just his eyes took the brunt of the fall. Apparently,
he fell eyes first.
Eyes first into some thorns, and they broke his impact so that his neck didn't snap, I guess. But yeah,
we actually don't hear anything else about the witch following that. So,
really?
Yeah.
We don't know what happened to her.
No, so
she could come back in the sequel.
Conceivably, she's still kicking around, growing things in her garden.
Sequel bait in that fairy tale. We don't even get sequel bait in this one.
Who knows? She could have multiple other towers with other children in them.
Oh my gosh.
We don't know.
She's got a whole, that's dark. She's got a whole system of, and they all do, but in the stories, they don't have magic powers. She just wants a child, I guess. We're going to talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, that's her. Like, she just wants to have a child. But the prince doesn't cut her hair off as like an act of self-sacrifice and desperation.
No, the witch cuts her hair off as a punishment.
Gotcha. So very much a stark contrast in terms of what's going on there. Finally, 4 was that in the book, is Rapunzel Fawkes the Phoenix. If you don't know what that means, obviously, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast, but no, I'm not saying I don't know why you're listening, but I'm surprised if you don't. Anyways, in Harry Potter, Fox the Phoenix, and I think in mythology, phoenixes have healing tears. And in Harry Potter specifically, it cries on Harry when he's dying and it heals him. And in the end of this movie, as after her hair is gone and she can no longer heal Flynn Rider of his grievous wound, she's holding him and crying, and a tear of hers falls on his face. And this then heals his wound, and he lives. Is that anything like that happen in the book?
So her tears don't resurrect anyone.
Yeah, because that is, yeah.
But remember how I said the prince got blinded because he fell eyes first
Oh,
on
yeah.
the tower? At the very end of the story, her tears do restore his eyesight.
Oh.
Somehow.
Okay. So that's definitely...
Yeah, they definitely took that inspiration there.
Yeah, for sure. That's, very similar. It's just... And then I think they in order to make her more magical throughout, they took that... Obviously, there's some sort of magic in her. Mm-hmm. She cried tears that healed him, and then kind of worked that into, it's her hair. It makes that's a lot of decisions that make sense there in the Disney version of what they did. That very clearly inspired by the fairy tale. Okay, that was all I had for all the was that in the book. We're gonna have more of those, obviously, because we tend to in terms of Katie's better in the book and stuff. So we're gonna get right to that right now and talk about what was better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
I have a couple things here. I don't have a ton of stuff in this segment.
No, not at all.
You guys are going to get the feel for this too as we continue talking about it. Maybe you've already got this kind of feeling. It is hard to compare these like one-to-one.
Oh, it's almost impossible.
And that is something that we come across a lot when we're doing like especially short stories and like picture books, because by necessity movies have to flesh out the story so much.
Yeah.
It's hard to hold things up and find that like one-to-one comparison. Yeah. But I've done the best that I can here.
Yeah, these are truly the hardest in terms of like, especially when it comes to like the final verdict of like, I mean, they're such completely different. It's 2.5 pages. Yeah. That is specifically meant to be told to kids as they're falling asleep or whatever, versus an hour and a half long animation fest of fun family entertainment. Like it's night and day.
They're two different things, and they're setting out to achieve different goals.
Very different things. Yeah.
So, but for better in the book, I have a couple things. One thing that I really like about the fairy tale, that I like about fairy tales in general, is the idea of the tough bargain. At the beginning of the story, the father is faced with the choice. Do I agree to give my baby to the witch in return for this plant to save my wife, or do I choose my child over my wife? It's a Sophie's choice.
In the movie.
In the book.
You said to save his wife. I thought his wife wasn't dying. I thought she just wanted that.
But he thinks she is.
He thinks she is?
Okay, we talked about this in the prequel
I feel like
episode.
I remember that.
We talked about this in the prequel episode, that it was like a folk belief that if you didn't get a pregnant woman like exactly what she wanted, that she would like waste away and die.
Okay, I forgot about that, but yes, I remember that now. That there was like like she wasn't actually sick, but it was like a myth or whatever that if they didn't get the food they craved, that they would in fact die from it. Okay.
But anyway, that tough bargain element is an aspect of fairy tales that is reoccurring that I really enjoy. Because you never know how that's going to play out in a story. Yeah. So I don't know that it would have worked in Tangled.
Yeah.
But it is an aspect of the original story that I really enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's fair. I think the thing that's hard, I like that. I don't know if I love it this one. Maybe I do. Right. I do. I changed my mind because I keep forgetting that he thought she was going to die and not just she was hungry, but and wanted a Frosty and Wendy's fries real bad or whatever. But yeah, I don't think we'll talk. I have notes about what I want to talk about, or I have notes about sort of what the theme of Tangled, the film, and the direction they took the story and the narrative they were going for that I think is really effective. And I don't think that tough choice sort of inciting incident really helps tell that story any better. Because I think it's a very specific story for very with a very pointed and specific message about about parentage and like for children, about their parents and about abusive relationships and that sort of thing. And I think I don't think that helps with what the story they wanted to tell. So
no, I agree with that.
No,
I don't think it works in the movie, but it's an aspect of the story that I like, and it's an aspect of fairy tales in general that I like. So my other thing that I put under better in the book is that the story actually gives us some kind of explanation for why Rapunzel is named after a leafy green. Because, you're basically naming your baby lettuce. And in the movie, there's no reason for it, other than that's just the character's name.
Yeah. Well, but also in the movie, it doesn't matter because we don't know that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we don't know that it's like naming your baby lettuce. It's just we know Rapunzel. It's the golden-haired girl from fairy tales.
I'm aware
right.
that now Rapunzel is just the name of that character. Right. But it's still like naming your baby lettuce.
I understand. I get what you're saying. I'm just adding in, saying that,
I'm just saying, at least in the fairy tale, there's an explanation for it.
Yeah. No, I get it. It's better in the book for people when they were reading the story. They needed that. When this story was being told originally, they would need that explanation.
That's true. Yeah.
We no longer need it, so it's not necessary, but back then it would be necessary.
Right. But imagine if her name was just lettuce.
If her name was lettuce,
was never addressed.
We would absolutely need an explanation. I 100% agree. All right, let's go ahead and talk about what was better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
All right, so let's get into Mother Gothel here. The movie has a better explanation for why she wants the baby. In the fairy tale, we never explore her motivations for that, which is fine because she's a stock witch character.
Right.
And that's what stock witch characters do. It's one of many things that they
children.
do. They steal babies.
Yeah.
They want children.
But I think that's problematic in its own way because it's definitely of a... Is that not absolutely inspired by sort of the weird idea that like they're the weird outcast old maids of their society and that never had children of their own, so they want to steal.
We're getting to it.
Oh, are we getting to it? Okay.
We're getting to it.
Okay.
So what I'll say for the movie is that we do have an explanation, like point blank. We understand what her motivation is for wanting this baby. Yeah. Because she has been using this magical power to stay young for centuries.
To stay a smoking hottie.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's a smoking hottie. I was like, I'm ashamed of how attracted I am to Mother Gothel. I am ashamed.
So we know this in the movie. We don't know this in the fairy tale, but it wouldn't have raised any eyebrows because, again, she's a stock character. She's the witch. Yeah. Witches steal babies. Yeah. Now, here's where that gets problematic. We can talk about witches being coded as, like, the old maid, the outcast in the society. That's pretty problematic. But historically, and especially in particular parts of Europe, witches are also coded Jewish.
Yeah. That's interesting. Because I thought in the movie she read, and I actually thought it was going to go you were going to potentially go a different direction, and I guess it's not super far off, but I thought the film coded her specifically sort of like gypsy, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. She like just something like the way she dresses and the hair, like she feels like a stereotypical depiction of like a gypsy.
She's coded,
for lack of a better word. A Romanian gypsy. Romanov. No.
That's the Russian royal family, baby. It's Romani.
Romani. That's the word. Romanov. Yeah. Romani.
I believe gypsy is actually considered a slur. So
no, it is.
Probably shouldn't.
No, it is. And that's why I was saying yes.
But I agree with you that I think, and especially in comparison to all of the other characters in the movie, I think Gothel is maybe not specifically Jewish or specifically Romani, but I think she is coded non-white.
Yeah. I don't think, but see, I also felt that way about most of the characters other than Rapunzel. I felt like they were all, I thought that both of her, well, not both, I thought her dad and Flynn Rider both were coded vaguely, like, and when I saw Southern Spain, I was like, okay, that makes sense, which I guess whiteness, quote unquote, is so messy and stupid anyways that like who is coded white and who isn't is complicated, but like, and like, weird, but to me, they both read not necessarily like quote unquote white. Like when I look at Flynn Rider, I don't know, like that's for sure a white guy. Like he's not Prince Charming. Like he doesn't code the same. Like he doesn't look to me the same way that like when I look at Prince Charming, like that's a white guy. When I look at Flynn Rider, maybe, sure,
maybe vaguely Mediterranean.
Yeah, that's what I mean, and that's why like when I said like, oh, if it's set in southern Spain, that maybe makes sense. Like maybe that kind of adds up a little bit more. But then Rapunzel, I don't know enough about the demographics of southern Spain to even comment on.
And I mean, but I think though, when we really get into the sticks of it and we look at historically like the area where the movie is drawing inspiration from, this specific fairy tale,
right? Germany.
And then also we look at how Mother Gothel is depicted compared to blonde-haired Rapunzel.
I agree.
I think we're getting into some problematic weeds here.
I absolutely agree. I thought the same thing. Like I said, I thought the same thing. I thought upon watching it that was a little. Yeah, to me, it didn't read as a potential Jewish stereotype or like, problematic Jewish portrayal. To me, it read more Romanoff. Like I said, that was what I thought. Romani. That was where it felt like to me, which I think both are equally. I mean, that was. Yeah,
I think we could argue both of those codings are equally problematic.
Equally problematic, in that
when you couple it with like stealing a white baby.
Yeah.
Woof.
Yeah, and then on top of that, the white baby with real gold hair.
Yeah.
That gold, got to get that gold hair. It's not unproblematic. I will say that I think the movie does its best apart from her appearance, does its best not to code her or not to do anything that feels stereotypically like that to me was like woof, like that felt super problematic and felt like they were pushing any sort of weird.
I would agree with that. I think
other than the
is
visually,
mostly visual. Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought they did a really good job with her character, and I have notes about it, about the faults of her character all have to do with her like insecurity and that sort of thing, and it doesn't have to do with any sort of like greed necessarily, or like any sort of what would stereotypically be like the problem with the Jews. You know what I mean? Like, it's not her greed or like her conniving. It's like her insecurity and her I don't know. To me, it didn't read necessarily super problematic in the portrayal, but I could be wrong. I could be convinced otherwise. So
I think it's an interesting topic. I think definitely when you start like making connections there, you're like, oh, this is maybe it's like not so great of a thing to be depicting. But I also think a lot of it is like kind of bland enough that it's like, but were they going for that, or was it just something that happened? I don't know.
And I think both can still be bad, like even if you're not going for it. And I think it's very I think it would be very unlikely that they were going for any sort of anti-Semitic or anti-Romani coding, and like I don't think it would be intentional. It could have been accidental. It could have been slightly intentional. Who knows? But I think they wanted an imposing character who is in stark contrast to Rapunzel, who I don't want to say has to look a certain way, but kind of does for the narrative for
right.
At least,
yeah. Well, I mean, the hair is the thing. Yeah. And while I think, I do think that it could have potentially have been interesting to like deviate from the cultural image that we had of Rapunzel even prior to this movie. I understand wanting to go with recognizability. Yeah. Like, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. And so I think that then you can kind of see where all the choices fall into place, and it doesn't make it not bad, not necessarily that doesn't excuse the outcome and say like, well, it's fine. There's no reason to criticize it. It's just that I think it probably doesn't come, at least it would seem to me like it didn't come from a place of
malicious intent
or even and not that it has to, but or even like subconscious malicious, or like, you know what I mean, subconscious like coding. To me it just, I don't know, to me it just felt like they wanted this character to be played by Cher, and then they couldn't get Cher. Like,
yeah, maybe.
To me it looked like they designed it around Cher playing this character, and then they just didn't get Cher, and they were like, well, let's get somebody else.
She also looks a lot like if you look up Bernadette Peters, who played the witch in the original Broadway run of Into the Woods. Oh, yeah. She also looks a lot like Bernadette Peters in that show. Yeah. After she becomes
maybe they wanted one of those people, and then and then they just I don't know. It is interesting though. It is interesting.
All right, so moving on. The movie gives more of an implied explanation for why Rapunzel's hair grows so long, because we know that there's that magical flower aspect to it.
Yeah, the rejuvenation.
Right. Not that a fairy tale necessarily needs an explanation for 60 feet of hair, but I do think it's interesting. Yeah, I thought they did a good job of kind of explaining that. Pascal is my next note. I do love Pascal.
Yeah, he's cute.
He's very cute. He's a very sassy kind of a princess sidekick.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he's fun. He's fun. Yeah. He's not particularly unique in my mind, but he is fun.
I like that the movie gives Rapunzel some agency. Mm-hmm. She's more of a character in her own right. And they give her some faults as well. She's naive, but she's very kind, clearly very intelligent. Songs. Also a thing that the movie has that the book does not. Songs. And I do like the score for this movie.
The score is really good. Yeah. Like not even this. Yeah. You're talking about like the
score and the songs. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, both.
I think both are really
both good. Are good. I thought the score, I was surprised because I've heard enough of the songs numerous times that I remember like all the main ones, but the score, obviously I don't really listen to scores very often, and I was kind of surprised by how much I enjoyed the cinematic score, like not the the singles, like the songs from the.
I thought the movie did a really good job of getting our male lead into the tower without having him be a prince who spies on the witch and then has Rapunzel throw down her hair.
Yeah, him running and trying to find a place to hide.
Yeah, I thought it all worked. It all made sense. It didn't ever feel like they were forcing it. Mm-hmm. I also think, and I want to talk about this a little bit. I think the movie strikes a good balance between modernizing Rapunzel's response to a strange man letting himself into her home, but not just making her a quote-unquote strong female character.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Maybe not. Maybe
not.
Maybe not. I'd have to see what you...
Like, I thought the way that she responds to that, like, with the frying pan, but, like, you can tell she's still kind of, like, freaked out by it, instead of just having her be, like, super tough. Right. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I think I see what you're saying. Like, it just feels very in character because she obviously has enough spirit, or I won't say enough spirit, but like she has that strength and that spirit within her, and she does defend herself, and doesn't just like isn't so naive as to be like, oh, who are you?
She's not Snow White.
Yeah, but she's also not. It doesn't tip over to like this weird unrealistic like. She doesn't just, you can tell she's still scared and not sure what to do. And yeah, it feels realistic for somebody who's lived in a tower their whole life and doesn't know how to handle this situation.
I think they did a really good job of like striking that balance, especially in her initial response to him. Yeah. So like, to me, that was impressive characterization and impressive depiction of it. Mm-hmm. The pub thugs. I love the pub thugs. Yeah. And I've Got a Dream. Yes. I've Got a Dream, I honestly think might be the most entertaining sequence in the whole movie. I love that song.
The most entertaining? Probably, yeah.
Like the fake out setup and then the twist where he starts singing. Yeah. Like, it's so good. Yeah. And this movie came out while we were in college, but I always try to think like how I would have responded to that as a kid. And I think I would have absolutely lost my mind. Because I would not have seen it coming.
Yeah, it's a fun rug pull moment that you're not expecting. That definitely, and it's a good song. It's a fun song. I would say, if you want to say most entertaining part of the movie, I would say probably. I don't know if it's the best part of the movie, but most entertaining, it's, probably.
And that's kind of where my notes end for better in the movie. I don't have a lot of notes pertaining to the middle because, like we talked about at the beginning of this episode, there's no real direct comparison. It's hard to hold things up and talk about like, well, this versus this, and this was better. You can't really do it. But I think I did hit on a lot of the stuff that I really like about this movie. And I do want to say, I think the writers do a really good job of expanding the story in a way that makes sense and that takes it out of the tower. Yeah. Because we had to get this story out of the tower. It has to be out of the tower.
You could do a very like artistic Rapunzel reboot. It's like a bottle episode. You know, it's just like all in the tower, and it's like her coming to terms with being trapped in the tower. It's like a deep psychological like. Ooh. Exploration of Rapunzel and her being trapped in the tower and her relationship with Mother Gothel, and it's like real dark, and you could do that. It could be good. It wouldn't be a Disney kids movie, but
I'm sure that exists as a fanfic.
I think that would actually be a really interesting spin if you were going to do like a Rapunzel story, is to take it like that direction.
To take it like psychological, like you said.
Yeah, somebody trapped in one room for the whole time with this character, and you could even do the fun quote unquote thing of like, if you're watching the movie for the first 30 minutes, you don't even really realize what story you're watching, and then you're like, oh, it's Rapunzel. Shit.
Then there's like a hair reveal,
some sort of hair something, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And you could probably come up with if you wanted to modernize it, you could do it in a way, where it's she's in a high-rise sky, like a skyscraper, like the penthouse in a skyscraper, and maybe it's not hair, maybe it's you could come up with some modern twist on it that was really interesting. But anyways, that would be how you would do it. Yeah, wouldn't be a fun Disney movie with a pet chameleon. All right, that's it for Better in the Movie. Let's talk about what the movie nailed.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
I played a little bit fast and loose with this segment.
Okay.
Some of my things are like random specific details. Other things are kind of ideas or themes that I thought the movie did a good job of bringing over. So my first thing is that both of these stories feature a pregnant lady who is saved by a plant.
Boom. Nailed it.
Nailed that. Rapunzel's hair, really long.
Wow.
Nailed
Crushed
it.
I mean, if they didn't get that one, I don't know if the movie would have had much hope. But
the witch keeps Rapunzel hidden away in a tower.
wow.
Nailed it. And now my first looser one. The witch/mother figure is abusive in both stories. Although I think there are different things going on. And I think that has to do with the medium.
Yeah.
As well as the audience. So the fairy tale, I think, has a lot of commentary on like older generation versus younger generation. There's more of this idea of like a child who's growing up and the parent who can't accept that.
Yeah.
And like wants to shelter them away from the world.
Yeah.
And the movie, I think, revamps that into a story about a child escaping from an abusive parent.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was what I found most compelling about the movie this time watching it, was that element of it. And really seeing because to me it was like I know I've seen this movie before, but I don't remember when or whatever, but I didn't remember much about it, but I had forgotten how strong the quote unquote raised by narcissist vibes of this movie there are with Mother Gothel, and the way she talks to Rapunzel and their back and forth in their relationship. If you don't know specifically what that means, it's a specific subreddit, but it's also just like a whole internet thing of people talking about being quote unquote raised by narcissists. And I don't want to get into the whole thing. I don't know enough about all of it to comment on it, but maybe it's not, I don't know, whatever. But the way that she talks to Rapunzel throughout the film, the weird passive aggressive sort of gaslighty way felt very realistic.
Gaslighty, backhanded compliments.
Yes, where everything and the constant I'm
very
the bad
condescending,
guy.
Turning the blame back around on her.
Everything they do
it's
is
all
instantly
textbook.
turned around on them, but at the same time mixed with this like saccharine over
and the guilt.
The guilt mixed with like this fawning profession of love mixed with guilting them. It was just felt very realistic and that was what I thought was most compelling, because I thought it was potentially a very useful thing for a kid to. It almost felt like a very good way to smuggle in this because she is the obvious villain of the film.
Yeah.
It felt like a good way to smuggle in this message for kids that could potentially be in a situation like that, to maybe recognize that within their own life and potentially see that it's not okay. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, that's how my mom talks to me, or my dad, whatever.
Yeah,
that's how one of my parents talks to me, or even a whoever, and recognize that, and then when you see at the end that she was the bad person, not me, or whatever, that could be a really useful, and I thought that was really interesting and sort of maybe a level deeper than some Disney movies tend to be sometimes. I don't know.
No, I agree with that, and I think they did a bang up job of characterizing that type of person.
Yeah. And I think the thing that was most interesting, or the most striking example of that, was the Mother Knows Best song. Because it's this fun, sort of cheerful comedic song, but it's freaking horrifying when you listen to it.
Yeah.
When I was listening to it again, and in the moment and knowing their relationship and everything, it's just like an anthem of gaslighting and emotional abuse. And it's just like, oh no, This is so... Oh, wow. That juxtaposition was very striking to me in a way that it hadn't been previously, for whatever reason.
So we also, in the movie, we have the line, Rapunzel, let down your hair, which is straight from the fairy tale.
Yep.
Gothel says it, and they even get one in for Flynn at the end, despite the changes to the story. Mm-hmm. And my last thing on here, we already talked about this, but Rapunzel's tears healing her love interest in some way. And I would maybe give that one kind of like an asterisk that it could also potentially go into better in the movie, because I think the movie gives more of an explanation.
Right.
Because we know that she possessed some type of magic.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that her tears would also be magic.
Yeah, it doesn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, like in the fairy tale, it's like 2 tears fell on his eyes and then he could see again.
Yeah. That's the power of love.
Which is great in a 2.5-page fairy tale.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But I did think that was a creative way to incorporate that kind of random element from the story.
For sure. All right, we've got a few odds and ends, some general notes, and then we'll get to the final verdict.
So I want to go back to Mother Gothel for a minute. Mm-hmm. We talked about what a good job the movie does of portraying that type of like narcissistic, abusive character, and a parent specifically.
Yeah.
And now I have seen criticisms that the script goes like too obvious in having her be mean to Rapunzel. And I want to speak to that for a minute, because I feel like it's a misunderstanding of storytelling.
Okay.
Because usually when I see this kind of complaint, it's in the vein of like there's no, not mystery, but like they have her go like so hard on being mean, but aren't we supposed to like her or something because Rapunzel likes her?
Like the idea being that we're supposed to maybe be unsure about whether or not she's actually like bad or if she's just like...
Which I think is what people who pose that criticism are maybe wanting out of the story.
Yeah.
Because I do think that's a pretty common form of storytelling.
I think you could do that.
Currently is like the villain that we're unsure about, or like the complex villain.
The complex villain whose motivations we understand a little bit better, that aren't just, I want to be young forever. Maybe she has, maybe we find out she had a daughter who died,
right.
And this sort of thing. And she actually does care about Rapunzel, whereas in the movie, it's just this weird, abusive relationship. Yeah.
Well, and I think there's a misunderstanding too, in that there's no mystery here. We, the audience, already know that she's the villain. She's revealed as the villain like immediately from the get-go.
Yeah.
So we're not dealing with like, oh, what's she gonna do? What's gonna happen? We're dealing with dramatic irony here. Yeah. And the dramatic irony is in watching Rapunzel trust someone who we know is not to be trusted.
Right.
I mean, it's similar to The Lion King, where like Simba doesn't know that Scar is not to be trusted, and all you can do is sit on your couch and go, no, don't trust him.
Right. Yeah, I think, for sure that I think it's I can see a version of this story that does make Mother Gothel a more sympathetic and complex character, and I think it could also be good, potentially. But I think that would probably tie more into the theme that you mentioned from the story, potentially of the older, of like letting go of your daughter, of the older versus the younger, like older generation versus younger generation, and that sort of thing. Like you could take it that direction. I think it could work fine. Like I think you could tell a compelling story that way that meant something. But as we've discussed, I think the specifics, like main point that this story is going for is dressing down and calling out abusive relationships and wanting to show kids what those look like and why they're bad. Mm-hmm. And so we have to have those sort of more obvious, she can't be super sympathetic.
Yeah.
We have to have those more obvious, like her being cruel moments, but also mixed in with her being nice and her, like, I thought her dialogue and everything she said was written in a way that felt super realistic to how a kid would remember and sort of how a kid imagines or remembers adults talking to them, if that makes any sense. Like the way that maybe it's not super realistic to how somebody would actually talk, but when you're a kid and you're experiencing it and then thinking back on it, even, you know, trying to remember conversations and stuff you had with your parents from, you know, months, weeks ago, I felt like the movie captured the way kids' minds interpret that relationship. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I felt like what they were going for, it did perfectly. And I can see the criticism of it being it not being the complex, interesting villain that she could be. But I think it works for the point of the film.
Yeah, no, I agree. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but I do want to bring it up because it's like the number one criticism of this movie that I see always, which is, why was Mother Gothel honest about when Rapunzel's birthday is?
Oh, yeah.
That's such an easy lie.
I thought that too when when she's like, the lamps or the lights, they appear on my birthday every year, and I'm like, why did you tell her that her birthday was then?
Why even introduce the concept of a birthday at that point?
You could just lie and it's so I had the same thought.
Also, want to bring up how buff is Rapunzel? Because I don't think I could casually swing around our cast iron with one hand like she does.
Yeah.
Our cast iron's pretty heavy.
It's pretty heavy. She does, maybe it's like prison where there's nothing else to do but work out.
She just does push-ups.
She just does push-ups and sit-ups all day.
When I was thinking about it, she does pull Gothel into the tower every day.
She does that every day, and then the rest of the day she's doing chores, and then she talks about how bored she is. I'm sure she's getting her
she's just gonna
her push-ups and her
Hulk out,
her chin-ups in. Where's that? What that would have been a fun if it's just like with no explanation. The movie starts and the first time we see Rapunzel, she's just cut. Like she's just like she looks like Wonder Woman. She's just like. And then we realize during the first song, the opening song, when will my life begin? It's just her doing crunches and push-ups like the whole time.
She like hangs from the ceiling beams and does pull-ups.
Yeah.
My next note is about the lantern scene.
All right, now I need somebody who's musically talented to rewrite "When Will My Life Begin," but it's all about working out. Okay. Just all the lyrics are swapped out for like lines about like getting gains and protein powder and like
pumping iron. Don't skip leg day.
Yeah, leg day. Yeah, I just need that version. Anyways, sorry. Continue.
My next note is about the lantern scene, and I see the light. So you wanted to talk about that.
Yeah. The only note I had was that I See the Light kind of slaps. It's a good song.
It's a good song.
I like all the songs in this, but I See the Light's really good. It's the. I would be interested. I was thinking this when we watched the movie. I was like, I wonder if you timed where this falls in the movie, if it falls at the same point in the film as A Whole New World. Because it's like this movie's A Whole New World, and I was wondering, but it's good. I thought it was it's a night. I really like that. The whole lamp scene is very pretty. So
actually, it probably falls like fairly similar because Disney movies tend to follow a similar narrative
they have an
structure.
Algorithm kind of.
This is where the love song goes.
Yep.
I do want to talk about the end of this movie. First off, I'm going to curse here real quick. So if you're listening to this with your kid, just skip ahead like a few seconds. I just want to point out that Did I Mumble Mother is like the Disney version of Did I Fucking Stutter?
Yeah, it is. It is. That's a good moment. I like that. I was like, nice.
Because that's what she says.
Yeah, it's savage. Savage.
So the end of this movie, I think, is maybe, to me, the weakest part of the movie. I think the ending in general gets a little Deus Ex Machina.
Oh yeah, for sure. The Rapunzel just, like I said, just like she has a vision of that this star on this thing, or this sunburst on this thing.
I don't know how the movie expects anyone to believe that she flashes back and has such clear memories from being like
in the crib.
Few days old.
It's
like
silly.
What? And then like on top of that, we have Flynn deducing that Rapunzel is in danger from the guy saying it was the old lady, when they haven't really discussed her mother. We never see them really discuss that relationship. I mean, it's kind of a conclusive leap that he makes there. Yeah,
it does kind of, you're right. It's a little just like convenient at the end, like lazy.
Yeah. And I also think that Maximus getting the thugs and the ruffians is also a little bit like, because he wouldn't have necessarily known that they were friends.
No.
Yeah. Like, it's fun. Yeah. It's a fun ending. It works. It gets us to where we need to go. But it does get, I think, a little convenient and lazy there at the end.
No, I agree completely. Yeah. I felt that for sure. Like, the thing that stuck out the most to me was the Rapunzel just like, oh, I'm the princess. It's like, what? Okay. Yeah. I mean, sure. To me, it almost would have made more sense if she had just, like, decided, nah, forget this, I'm not staying here. Like, regardless of who she was. Like, I don't know. I felt like they could have just come up with a more interesting way than just, like, a light bulb going off and she realizes she's the princess. And then Ryder shows up to save her. Like, he could have showed, I don't know. Just, it all felt a little convenient and weird.
Just a wee bit. I also want to talk about the denouement of this film, where Rapunzel gets to reunite with her real family. I think that's a really modern response to this story. I think the modern response like really keys in on the aspect of the father trading away his baby / the witch stealing a baby. But that's actually not super important to the fairy tale.
Right.
It's literally just the inciting incident. It never comes up again.
Yeah. Yeah, and it could not be important. I think it's important in this one, and like you said,
I think it's important for what they're doing. I just think it's really interesting because to me that's such a modern response to an older story.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what about her real family?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in particular, like with this movie, it's because of the abusive relationship she had with Gothel. The idea of finding her quote unquote true parents and an actual loving family is like feels important.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I'm glad that they went with making Gothel an abusive parent for a lot of reasons, but also because I think if they hadn't, and they had still done this like similar denouement that is potentially really problematic and troublesome as far as like adoption and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you have to go find your real family though.
Yeah. No, I agree for absolutely. I think it's it could and that's why it was like the true quote unquote family I think that can be a problematic narrative if they hadn't done it the way they did it with her being out for herself, insecure, abusive, gaslighting person that she was. Who didn't deserve to die, but still. In my opinion, but
as far as Disney villain deaths go, one of the less gruesome ones, though.
That's true. That is true. She
basically just poofs
into
like bone dust. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, she just starts disintegrating and then falls out the window. So Pascal, I was cheeky in the opening. Pascal didn't really kill her. She was already dying.
He saw an opportunity,
he expedited
though,
the process.
and he took it. He was like, you know what?
I don't get many chances to trip old ladies out windows, so this one's clean on the conscious.
He's like, I've been wanting to do that for years.
She was probably dead before she hit the ground. I'm good. I'm good. I'm all good.
Last thing, this movie has the cutest end credits ever.
I only watched the one. It was the opening one. It was like the map. Is there what else happens? We didn't watch
the end. We didn't watch the end credits because you turned it off.
Yeah, I didn't know there was anything.
They're really cute. It's like a really stylized, like storybook looking.
Yeah. I saw the first one, and it was like a map of the kingdom. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And
but there's more after that.
Yeah. All right. That's it for our odds and ends. We got it. It's time. Let's do it. Final verdict.
Now, are you ready for your sentence?
Sentence? But there must be a verdict first.
Sentence first, verdict afterward.
I didn't write a final verdict, so I'm gonna spitball one for you guys here. This is a tough one for me because I'm not going to lie, I do feel very compelled to be faithful to my fairy tales.
Yeah.
Because I love them so much.
So dearly.
So very dearly. However, fair's fair, and I do think that the movie tells a story that is entertaining and has important messages. And I also think that the movie does a really good job of doing both of those things and also updating the story and also still kind of adhering to the bones of this fairy tale.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it really does. There's still a lot of stuff here in Tangled that you can also find in your collection of Grimms. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm going to go with the movie for this one. Wow. Even though I do want it noted that these are two different things. Yeah. Oh, we talked. And I really, the more we do this, the more I don't know how much I love doing better or worse at the end.
You have to. It's the rule of the show. I know it doesn't make any sense. It's the rule of law. It's the rule of the show. Them's the rules. We don't make them. We just enforce them.
But we literally did make them.
And now we just enforce them. It's like the Constitution. We can't change a jot or tittle or whatever. So them's the rules. Yeah, we can't. We just gotta decide.
I know,
but yeah, we put enough caveats down throughout the course of the episode that people understand that the final verdict isn't a definitive.
No, it's not. They're two different beasts doing two different things.
Yeah. But in this case, the movie won. Disney will be taking that check made out to This Film Is Lit. As always, you can do us a giant favor. You can head to patreon.com/thisfilmislit. You can support us for $2, $5, or $15 a month. And there you get access to our bonus content, as well as other things, early access to the episodes, all that fun stuff. The most recent bonus content episode we put out was a review of New Girl and Lost Girl. Let's Hear It for the Girls was the name of that episode, where we spent one drunken quarantine evening talking about those two television shows for about an hour and a half. So if you want to check that out, you can do that on our Patreon feed. We'll be doing another one here shortly. We're wrapping up some television shows. I'm sure we'll have at least one. We have some feelings about those. We'll probably do that. We just finished Dead to Me season 2, so we'll probably talk about that.
We also have not a super long list. We have a short list of movies from our patrons. I asked them to recommend extra material.
Oh yes, non-book based movies.
Based movies.
Yes, I forgot about that.
For us to talk about.
We are going to do that. We got to watch
those in our patron feed. So if you're interested in having opportunities like that to recommend things that you would like to hear us talk about that we wouldn't normally talk about because they're not based on books, please join our Patreon.
There you go. And you can do us another big favor by leaving us a review on iTunes. If you can't, just support us on Patreon. That's totally cool. We understand. Just leave us a review on iTunes. It's super helpful. Also, you can follow us on all of the major social media networks: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads. I know Goodreads isn't a major social media network, but for books people, it is. Katie, what's next?
Up next, we are doing a Switch episode. You're going to read the book.
Yep, already started it.
And we are also being joined by a friend who has joined us before.
Mr. Aaron Rabinowitz from Philosophers in Space and Embrace the Void podcasts. He is teaches he teaches some manner of philosophy. Now I can't recall specifically. He's Philosophers. He's a philosopher. He hosts the Philosophers in Space podcast, which is a podcast that talks about sci-fi, TV shows, books, movies, all that good stuff. And in each episode, they relate whatever specific thing they're talking about to some specific philosophical concept. Break it down. He was on our Minority Report episode, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, and we were on their
The
Golden Man episode, which was a Philip K. Dick story. So we thought both of those are Minority Report. Yeah. Apparently, we only work with Aaron.
We only collaborate
on Philip K. Dick because
which brings us to our next episode. We will be talking about A Scanner Darkly.
Which is a Philip K. Dick novel, like I said, which I'm currently reading. It is also a 2006, I believe, film starring Keanu Reeves. So in 2 weeks' time, we'll be talking about that with Mr. Aaron Rabinowitz. So come back then. We'll be doing a prequel in 1 week's time, where we'll be previewing that. Aaron won't be on that episode; it'll just be us. But in 2 weeks' time, we'll be back with Aaron. So until that time, guys, gals, non-binary, and everybody else,
keep reading books,
keep watching movies,
and keep being awesome.